What's up, everybody?
We're live.
We're finally live. Thanks for being patient, everyone. And Daddy Sam with the commentary in the chat window before we even go live. And speaking the truth, man, this is what happens when your Stardom fandom takes off. We're just we're too big now. We're too big. All 6 people that are in here, and 2 of them are probably us. So.
Yeah, Jen Cohen, the plane was running behind schedule, so she dropped me off a little later than I thought. Sorry, everybody.
Sam, you're really important these days.
Super important.
Super important. Super important.
Were you in charge of going to visit Ames, Iowa, or was that someone else?
No, somebody else screwed that one up.
Oh, okay.
Should we talk about what we're sipping on? I'll go first.
Sure.
Drinking some whiskey. Just picked it up today. Some winter wheat bourbon. I've talked about it on the podcast before. Go to your local Trader Joe's and check it out. It's good stuff.
Right
on.
on.
You, Connor?
You're gonna probably give me shit, but I got a Topo Chico hard seltzer.
Oh,
are those good, by the way?
They're very good. They're very good. Yeah, this is the tropical mango one. Probably my favorite. Their lemon is actually really good too. I feel like lemon's usually not a very good flavor for hard seltzer, but theirs is it's called tangy lemon, and it's actually really good. So,
not a huge hard seltzer guy, but Topo Chico's it's good seltzer water, so I can imagine.
Yeah, if you like Topo Chico, you'll like this.
Is it vodka or is it tequila? Is it like ranch water or what's the scoop?
I don't know. It's hard seltzer, sparkling water. Hard seltzer spiked sparkling water is what it's described as. I'm assuming it's malt liquor. That's usually what these are made from, but I don't know.
I thought they were made from vodka.
Malt liquor. But I mean, we could ramble about this for hours and hours, which I think that's what people want to hear. Justin, what are you sipping on, sir?
Well, I'm really depressed because I just, I thought the Seahawks couldn't be any worse, but they're even worse than I could have imagined. So
it's bad, man. It's bad.
It's either like 5 beers or none, and so we're at water right now. But we'll see what happens.
We'll
see what happens.
Water boy in his finest form.
God's
Columbia
beverage,
jug.
Sam.
Oh goodness!
Look at this thing. It's massive. It holds so much water.
I guess.
Oh yeah.
Well,
terrible.
Everyone raise a drink because that dumb shit era of football.
Glad it only
finally
lasted
over.
2 years.
Cheers.
It's finally over.
Cheers.
Finally over. So cheers. We can move on. So
let's cheers again to the new era. Hey,
that's right. Yay! Huskies have a new head coach, Kalen DeBoer. Before we talk too much about this guy, and the casual fan might not recognize the name, and I understand that. I think we got to recap the weekend. And Sam, I mean, you, Justin, and I were all pretty plugged into the whole weekend. I think we wasted way too much time in front of a computer on the Dogman boards this weekend. We can probably all attest to that. Recap this weekend because it was definitely a roller coaster ride, not just for UW too. And we weren't even the only ones in the Pac-12 conference that had a splashy, or I guess a new coaching hire, I should say, over the weekend. So start out like Wednesday night, like going into the weekend. I feel like that's kind of when stuff first started to leak out a little bit about kind of like the route that we were going with our coaching search. So start off there and we can kind of work off that.
Yeah. So I guess this isn't something that I totally knew going into the weekend, but it's come out since then that it sounds like our number one choice was actually Dave Clawson from Wake Forest, which is somebody that none of us, in our last episode, none of us had him in our top 5 for good reason. I think that would have been, I don't know why he was number 1. Like he's the head coach at Wake Forest. I think he used some of the leverage to get an extension, right? I think he's got a full extension at Wake Forest and got paid, but he's been like mediocre at best at Wake Forest. So I don't get why he was number 1. That's kind of shocking, thing that came out. I was like, what? But going into the weekend, it really sounded like we were in pretty deep conversations and negotiations with Matt Campbell, who we all had as like potential home run hire candidate for us. And
Well, Justin said it was unrealistic, though.
I mean, it's true.
Yeah,
right?
we can rehash
Didn't
that.
happen, but continue, Sam.
Yeah. I mean, it was more realistic than you thought.
Of course.
Connor's trying
to
get some credibility here. Because Matt Campbell was Connor's guy. And sounds like we went back and forth. We gave him a first offer. We upped the ante going into the weekend. And it started to come out that like Kalen DeBoer was the definite like plan B if Matt Campbell didn't work out. And just kind of the narrative there was Matt Campbell was being a tough negotiator. We were kind of going back and forth with him, and obviously some hesitancy on his end on whether or not he wanted to accept the job. And then on the back end, all we hear from Kalen DeBoer is like, you put the paper in front of me and I sign it. Like, I want to be a dog. I want to be the head coach of the Huskies. And I guess some added element to the Matt Campbell conversations was at the time, it really was thought to be a battle between whether Campbell was going to end up at USC or UW. And so then obviously we have the bombshell news drop. What was that? Sunday, right?
Sunday.
Or yesterday. Yeah.
And a long 48 hours.
Yeah. I'm starting to mix my days together here.
Yeah.
But USC out of nowhere hires Lincoln Riley, the Oklahoma stalwart, probably top 3 coach right now. Nick Saban, Dabo, and probably him in terms of, well, I guess you got to throw Ryan Day in the mix too.
And you could argue Kirby Smart, but yeah. He's up there for sure.
Yeah. Top 5 for sure.
Yeah.
And like nobody thought that guy was leaving Oklahoma. So USC backed up the Brinks trucks and Lincoln Riley got paid in a big way.
That contract sounds insane if the leaks are to be true, but continue.
Yeah. Did you see like all the other stuff included in that too?
Yeah,
like all the like they bought him like a $6 million house.
Private jet for 24/7 family use. Or
they bought both of his houses in Lincoln.
500,000 over asking price.
Asking price.
Basically $1 million, just like
bonus.
Here's $1 million. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah. So, anyways, that happened, and so then we're all sitting here like, "Whoa, well, that's sweet. That means like we're probably gonna get Matt Campbell, right?" Wrong. Apparently, he doesn't want to come to Seattle. He's a Midwest boy. I also think that, I mean, we talked about that as well. Like, would he actually want to come to the West Coast, to a metropolitan area like Seattle? Obviously, the answer to that is no.
Yeah. I
don't know. Is there
there's at
anything
least
else
too much hesitancy.
Anything else that we want to touch on in terms of like the process that got us to where we're at today and candidates in and out? I mean, it's pretty wild couple of days, but it was also in the same light. It was one of the most like clear-cut coaching searches too, where it was like, these are the 2 guys we're going after, and it's 1A, 1B.
Right.
We gave Matt Campbell an offer probably on Friday or early Saturday, had an expiration date Monday morning, and that came and went, and we moved on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what actually happened.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're talking about what we were seeing on the boards and stuff, like
it was wild.
It seemed like we had Campbell locked up Saturday night. Like that's kind of essentially like we went to bed Saturday thinking that we had Matt Campbell. Obviously, I mean, this is all through 3 different people or whatever, probably.
Yeah.
And the real media or mods, I guess, that run the site that we get a lot of our information from, they were naysaying that basically that like they hadn't heard that and that it's still likely DeBoer. So I mean, I think it was a pretty eventful weekend, but also a little bit anticlimactic, I guess. Like, so what was your first reaction, I guess, whenever it really sounded like we were getting DeBoer? Like, after all the Matt Campbell talk, and like, I'll turn this to you, Justin, so that you can speak a little bit on this. Obviously, I think the perception changed a little bit after the hiring of Lincoln Riley, at USC, and obviously that was a great hire for the conference, great hire for USC. Instantly puts credibility back in LA, and he can really own the Pac-12 if he's able to recruit that area well, which he should.
Yeah.
So obviously, it's kind of one of those things, like USC makes their moves and it's like, okay, your turn, Jen.
Yeah.
And then this ends up being the hire. And I can understand that people are underwhelmed, but I just want to hear kind of what your first reaction, I guess, was to it. Because Kalen DeBoer is an offensive guy, and I know that you like offense. Matt Campbell isn't really as much of an offensive guy, so I'm just wondering and curious what your thoughts were.
What's the advanced analytics, man?
Well, I mean, you saw it all over Twitter, but I was watching a lot of DeBoer tape over the weekend, as you could imagine, and I like it.
Sure.
I mean, this isn't a unique take. I thought it. Other people said it too. But if you showed John Donovan some of these plays, I think his head would combust. Right?
Oh, what's that?
Motions, read options.
You got to have too many men on the field or something.
Yeah. So offensively, and we talked about this before. I think you guys had him slightly higher than I did, but he was all in our top 5 of prospective candidates going into the search before any rumors were out there of who we were going to get and et cetera. And so I like Caleb DeBoer. I think he has a great offensive mind. His track record speaks for himself, right? At Sioux Falls. Where was he? He had a couple other stops, I think, in the MAC.
Eastern Michigan.
Eastern
Michigan for a couple of years.
Right.
And then
did
Fresno,
well there. Fresno, and then Indiana specifically. And you might remember they had a left-handed quarterback. What was his name? Penix?
Michael Penix Jr.
Yeah. Who at one point in the season was I believe a Heisman candidate, and it didn't end up turning that way. But he had a fantastic season.
Hurt.
Right. And we have a left-handed quarterback as well. That's dynamic
we do.
And fits that system of or run and shoot, or whatever you want to say, a high flying passing attack. So I think offensively it's great. Overall, the perception of the hire and how that's looked at nationally,
who gives a shit?
I know, I agree with you, but it matters to some people.
It doesn't matter to the recruits.
That's the biggest question mark, right? Because
go ahead.
When we saw on the boards, it's like, Jimmy Lake was a disaster, and we all knew that, but like 20 commits were, getting ready to transfer and et cetera. And what can DeBoer do to help save the recruits? And that's the biggest question, right? He hasn't been a head coach at a Power 5 school before, right? And so this is much like other moves when you've seen Matt Campbell, for instance, came from Toledo to Iowa State, or Urban Meyer going and making the big jump. Chris Peterson to an extent, but I don't think that's a fair apples to apples comparison, because Peterson was known nationally at Boise State and won a Big 6 game, and probably played one of the best college games ever, that Boise State Oklahoma game. And so it was well recognized.
Sorry to interrupt you. Have you seen that clip though, like of him and Stoops rewatching that game?
Yeah. Together.
No. Yes, I have. Yes, I have. Yes.
Yeah. That's a great clip. If you haven't seen it, folks that are watching, you should definitely go Google that, but not during our podcast. Go do it.
No, definitely after.
We're not losing viewers.
So that's the biggest question for me. I mean, there's the perception part, and Lincoln Riley was splashed. What is Jen Cohen doing? I saw less of it on the boards and more of it on Twitter. Some Jen Cohen hate of what the hell is she doing? She can't back up. She's treating us like a small tier school, et cetera, et cetera. I don't feel that way. I think it's a good hire. I think there are question marks, and rightly so, on the defense and recruiting that we just don't have the answers to yet.
Right.
Yeah. We'll have to let it play out. But yeah, I think, in general, like to Connor, your point, there's the Lincoln Riley to USC impact, right? Like that's the biggest splash hire in college football in a while, in my opinion. I mean, that changes the landscape of college football.
Until maybe tonight.
Brian Kelly to LSU.
I mean, that's pretty massive.
Yeah, but like LSU's been
move.
relevant. I feel like USC has been the sleeping giant of college football. And I over or under 4 years until USC is in the college football playoff. I think it's for sure under.
Yeah, I think it's under.
I think they could honestly be there next year.
Yeah, I mean they're gonna get a ton of transfers too. Like
yeah, and this 2022 recruiting class is gonna blow up for them. There's always talent on that. I think that they could be a college football playoff team next year.
Mm-hmm.
For sure, in year 2 and 3, I think they have a really good shot.
I mean, they're closer than anyone else in the Pac-12 South. Probably the whole Pac-12, to be honest. But
yeah. So I think that changes the landscape of college football. So having that just come down right before we announce our hire, like even if it was Matt Campbell, like it's still going to pale in comparison to that hire. But maybe like dissecting, I think there's a lot of Husky fans that probably feel like we settled for number 2 or we didn't get the guy that we wanted and whatnot. And I think there's definitely truth to that. Like we made an offer to Matt Campbell first. That's a known thing. But comparing and contrasting the two, I'm not sure if we had our priority right. Like you look at the tape, you look at the track record and the fit. Kalen DeBoer, to me, I'm just as happy having him. I think he could potentially, in the long run, be the better hire and better head coach at University of Washington than Matt Campbell would have been. So
yeah. The upside is for sure higher. I would say there's definitely more risk though with DeBoer as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
because I mean, you think about it, like Matt Campbell, he's done an amazing job in Ames, Iowa for Iowa State, but he has no West Coast ties at all. Like the thing, while DeBoer has been at Fresno State for as an offensive coordinator and head coach, probably like 4 years, 5 years, 4 or 5
Sounds
years.
Right. Yeah.
While he might not be recruiting the same exact player that some of the Pac-12 schools have, like USC, UW, Oregon, he's recruiting from the same schools. Like he has the built relationships with those high school coaches. He's maybe recruiting the 3 stars from that school, and now he's going to be recruiting the 4 stars, 5 stars from that school. So he already has the footprint. He already has the relationships built with the high school coaches in the areas that we recruit in. So I think he has a huge leg up on someone like Matt Campbell in that field. Like Matt Campbell might have the name, but he doesn't have the relationships yet. Like Matt Campbell would have to come in and like walk into Rainier Beach and Garfield and St. John Bosco and Mater Dei for the first time and be like, hey, I'm Matt Campbell. And they're like, oh yeah, I've heard of you. You know what I mean? Like it's easy to think like Matt Campbell has the big name, but there's risk with that too. And I think that gets overlooked. And that's something, Kalen DeBoer is going to have to go in and fight Mario Cristobal in Oregon and Lincoln Riley and USC for the top kids from those top high schools in our recruiting footprint. But he's not an unknown face in those hallways of those high schools. And so I don't think that can be overstated how important that is.
Yeah. I still think he's going to really have to nail his staff when it comes to recruiting, especially. He's just yes, I think he's a recognizable face for most of the West Coast recruits, which is obviously our primary recruiting zone. But he doesn't have the flashy name that, like, he doesn't have a Cristobal name. He doesn't have a Lincoln Riley name.
Not yet.
He doesn't even have a Matt Campbell name even. So like, I know that you were saying that he's not a West Coast guy in Campbell, but he's definitely known in college circles, and he's one of the bigger names out there right now in college football as far as coaching goes. So there's still obviously a lot of worries for me as it pertains to recruiting. I'll feel a lot better about it if I start to see some of these assistant hires, and if they have some recruiting prowess in their background, I'll feel a lot better about everything. And I have faith that can happen. I mean, obviously, you brought up his success at Sioux Falls, and like the guy knows how to build a winning program. So I mean, that would lead me to believe that he knows how to hire well. He knows, he definitely knows football. The guy is an X's and O's genius, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So you got to be excited about that. But the one thing I want to bring up though on that note is that this is a pretty different hire than what we're used to having at UW. Sark is probably the last one that would compare to this as far as like an offensive side of the ball type of hire, but at the same time, even like Sark was only a coordinator before. Like obviously,
yeah, I think you
have a head coach here.
You can make an argument that Peterson was that way. I mean,
yeah,
Peterson was thought of that way, right? Like you think about the
it was mostly
plays.
just because of his trick plays. Yeah, but
he's an offensive guy. I mean, he played quarterback in college and whatnot. So I do agree with your point. Like in general, Washington has been a defensive minded program, you know, thinking Don James
right,
and, you know, Jim Lambright and whatnot. But I think, you know, we've kind of touched on it on a broader scale, but I just want to like hammer some facts here so our listeners can understand the type of coach that we're getting. And Connor, you alluded to it. Like,
please keep sending questions, guys. We'll answer them at some point. So
yeah,
go ahead, Sam.
For sure. But I mean, he's a winner. Everywhere he's been, he's had success. As a head coach, overall, he's 79-9. Like you don't win that many. Yeah, like you don't win that many games. Like I don't forget about the level of, you know, where you're coaching, this and that. You're going 79-9. Like that to me speaks as somebody, to your point, that can build a staff around them, can build a culture, a winning culture, motivate and get the best out of everybody every given day out on the field. And so, you know, born and raised in South Dakota, he played football at Sioux Falls. And then I can't remember exactly how he ended up becoming the head coach. I think he might have jumped around the area a little bit in a couple different coaching capacities. But in 2005, from 2009, he was the head coach of Sioux Falls. He went 67-3. In his last 4 years, he was in the championship game at the NAIA level. And they won 3 of those championships. So like that is a dynasty that he built there. And, you know, then we jump into the bigger ranks and he joined Fresno State. Like that's part of the story that I want to hear is like, how the hell did Jeff Tedford find him to be his offensive coordinator at Fresno State? Like tip of the cap to Tedford for pulling that one out.
Watching some Wednesday night Maction.
Yeah, something. I don't know what he was doing. But yeah, he ended up at Eastern Michigan after his stint at Sioux Falls as the offensive coordinator there. And then, Tedford poached him, and kind of the rest is history from there. He blew up. I mean, immediately at Fresno State, that offense. I mean, what I want to walk through here too is like one of the exciting things that we've had is this 5-star quarterback in Sam Heward, and DeBoer is through and through a QB guru. I mean, his first stint at Fresno State as an offensive coordinator, Marcus McMaryion was a great quarterback for them. And if the name sounds familiar, he kind of flamed out at Oregon State and transferred. It didn't work for him at Oregon State. All of a sudden, he shows up at Fresno State with Kalen DeBoer, and he's a very proficient, effective quarterback in that Fresno State offense. And then DeBoer left Fresno State for a year to be the offensive coordinator at Indiana. And Justin, what you mentioned earlier, Michael Penix Jr. came out of nowhere and is like a mid-season Heisman hopeful.
Right.
And then he goes back to Fresno State as the head coach, and he's got a quarterback by the name of Jake Haener.
I've heard that name before.
Former Husky, got, quote unquote, beat out by Jacob Eason for the 2019 Husky season. He transfers to Fresno State, and he's even got, a little bit of Heisman hope this season, even if it was like for a week or two after his crazy performance against UCLA. But Jake Haener looks like a total game-breaking quarterback in DeBoer's offense. So you just look at the track record of offensive success, and particularly developing quarterbacks that have had other coaches and other circumstances and not been anybody. Like those quarterbacks transferred from their original school. Michael Penix Jr., like who even knew who that was until DeBoer got there. And now they were all, in their areas, household names, putting up crazy stats. So I think like wipe the memory of Sam Heward in the Apple Cup out of your brain. And let's just see, like, I'm assuming it's going to be Sam Heward. But, I mean, I'm excited from that perspective. You have a winning coach, proven to be kind of that CEO, culture-setting leader of the team, and has had great success grooming quarterbacks. How can you not be excited about that as a Husky fan?
Yeah, you will get the – Sorry. No, Justin, all I was going to say, and then you can go, is just that you are going to get the best version of Sam Heward with this hire. Like that for sure.
Yeah.
Of the two candidates, the upside with Sam Heward is way higher, and you will see that under Kalen DeBoer.
I think it goes beyond just the two candidates. I don't know offensively if there was a better coach for Sam Heward of all of the candidates that we had mentioned.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I mean, you could maybe argue Dave Clawson, but I just don't think so. I mean,
the only one that you could probably argue is Kellen Moore, but we all knew that wasn't really
that was a stretch
shot.
But
that was your number one, Sam.
I know, but I was kind of having fun with it.
Sam, you mentioned Apple Cup. Oh, Justin, did I cut you off again?
You did, but it wasn't important.
Sorry, go ahead.
We have questions in the chat about the Apple Cup.
I
just want to start.
Yeah, let's get the audience involved. Yes, let's do
I just want to start to get some of these off. And Sam, this question is for you from your lovely sister. Why was it so easy for Wazoo to win on Friday?
Well, here's the thing. Every once in a while, you got to throw little brother the bone. Every 7-8 years, it's good to give him one, give him some hope. And they were the better team, that's for sure. Better coach, better team. But, the Huskies that I grew up with as a kid, like we should be winning like 5+ Apple Cups in a row. After that, like you're going to lose one eventually. Sure. And my point in saying that is if we're going to lose one, I'm glad it happened this year. Like our team is in shambles. We don't even have a real head coach. Like, I can swallow that one better than if we were like going Chris Peterson 1 game away from the Pac-12 North Championship and losing. Like if it was going to happen, I'm glad it happened here. As to like how or why it was so easy, that would just, I would urge you to go back and listen to the other episodes because it's the old record that's been playing week in, week out. Same shit, different day.
Just with a different quarterback thrust into a really difficult situation. So
yeah. Thanks, Anna. Appreciate the question. Fantastic.
Thanks, Anna. Serge has a question. Justin, why don't you take this one? Do you think Jimmy Lake would still be with UW as the DC if they had hired a different head coach? I'm assuming this is after Chris Peterson. Like if they had hired a different head coach after Chris Peterson. Mute.
You're on mute, Justin. Classic.
Live, double mute. I think no shot, to be honest with you. I mean, at the time, it's so easy to have revisionist history, but at the time, he was one of the most coveted coordinators in college football. And so if it wasn't a head coach job at Washington, it was a head coaching job somewhere else. If it wasn't a head coaching job, it's a DC at Alabama or one of those types of schools where he goes and wins the national title. So I just don't see it. Obviously, it's easy to say now, and he was this egotistical maniac out there. Blah, 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 how could he? But at the time, I just don't think there was any shot.
Yeah, no way.
Which, we're hearing some really interesting things about we're going to get some major meat and potatoes on this subject probably in the coming weeks as far as like the entire meltdown of the Jimmy Lake era. And this seriously does rival He Who Shall Not Be Named. Like this year, I mean, you could argue it's more disappointing. It's not as much of a disaster because it's not 0-12. But it's
next year might have been.
Is 4-8, and some of us predicted 12-0 on the season. So
One of us.
Which on that note, yeah.
Who's
possibly.
Go Hawks? Get out of here.
I don't know. Who is this? Yeah, who's this clown?
well,
Now
Hawks
that
are
the
3-8,
season over,
so-
can we? Yeah. Yeah, do you want to reveal your prediction for your Hawks record? Oh yeah, we predicted them to be good too.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sam had 12-0, and I think both Justin. I had 11-1. Did you also have an 11-1?
I also
Justin?
had 11-1. Yes.
Yeah.
But I think that's what
So,
makes
not great.
what makes this meltdown stink so much. Like, it's hard to sit here with a 4-8 team and even insinuate that we have the level of talent required to go do that. But like going into the season, that's exactly what everybody thought. Like, I think the most conservative record predictions that I saw from experts and everything was like 9-3, and people were like, well, where are you going to find 3 losses for this team? So the fact that it just blew up in our face the way that it did week 1 against Montana is just like,
Yeah.
Rude awakening.
How John Donovan wasn't fired for that was
I don't know
crazy.
how Jimmy Lake wasn't fired for that.
I mean, I was in Greece at the time. I woke up early to, I think it was, I have a screenshot. I think it was like 75 unread text messages from you guys.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
And
From
I'm
both,
like,
from
what-
just us?
Yeah. And from what
Oh,
the hell?
man.
And I look at the score and it's 10-7 Montana at the time. And I'm like,
Yeah.
this has to be wrong. Like, no way.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, obviously Jimmy Lake, I would have been in favor of that now, but how John Donovan survived that long or into the bye. I mean, there's just, there's so many things, but we do have talent on this team. It's evident. Obviously it's easy to say not national championship talent because we were sold from Jimmy Lake a championship level offensive line. That clearly wasn't true. No. I mean, there could be some coaching in there too, but that's clearly not true.
They're definitely
not blocking Georgia with that offensive line.
No.
Right.
We're not blocking Montana with that offensive line.
Apparently not.
We were hyped up on the running backs and how there was such a great committee. Didn't start out great. I mean, we had some good running back play here and there, but not fantastic. Wide receivers in and out, didn't utilize them well. Tight end, Kate Otten's supposed to be the best player on the team, not even close, right? And so we have all these different things, and it just doesn't pan out. I mean, it's not arguable. So, I mean, it just doesn't pan out.
Yeah.
And that's only on the offensive side of the ball. And defense, for the most part, the talent was there. We just couldn't adjust and stop the run, which killed us and almost
the scheme killed us.
And I think hindsight will continue to serve us here, right? Like, we all thought we had a really talented team this year. Let's wait and see how many are playing on Sundays. There's probably going to be, more Sunday NFL players than a typical 4-8 team. I can tell
at least
you that.
2 from the secondary.
Yeah, I mean,
probably in the first round.
Yeah.
So that's
how do you do that? Like, that takes more skill to lose with that than to not. Like,
yeah. All right, we got to get back on track. The past is the past.
Past is the past.
Yeah.
Which brings up Sam G's question. Let's move on to DeBoer.
Ooh.
Are you concerned that no other schools wanted DeBoer?
Who fed her that question? That's a good question.
That is a great question.
That's a really good question.
Connor, what do you think?
Man.
Oh, I should answer this one? Well, I'm just wondering if, I'm wondering what really went on behind the scenes. If DeBoer was maybe there were other schools that were calling for him, but he was deflecting everything because he pretty much knew that he had the UW job. I think that'd be dumb for him. Like, I think you entertain everything just to leverage everything. But, yeah, I mean, for sure he's not the flashy name, but he definitely is one of the better coaches that was available, especially along the West Coast. So, I think the openings that you had, no one was going to settle for that, I guess. USC was not going to hire Kalen DeBoer. I think if an Arizona State had come open or something like that, I could have seen something like that happening. He had even been mentioned with Wazoo if UW ended up with Campbell. So, I mean, he was definitely probably that tier just barely below the top tier. But I think it's also just about fit, right? Like, and I think he just fits the culture at UW, like just him as a character, or his character rather. And then obviously just the status of the roster. And I mentioned that one of the main worries that I had in hiring a new coach is a mass exodus. And little do we know that, like, posted just today on one of the boards was a thread about basically like 20 guys were going to be on their way out if Jimmy Lake actually stayed. So ironically, if Jimmy had stayed, you might have seen more of a mass exodus than you probably will. And specifically for me, it was the talent in the wide receiver room. I really wanted to make sure that we kept the top guys in Jalen McMillan and Romo Dunze there. And those guys for sure are going to stay with Kalen DeBoer and Sam Heward throwing the rock. So, I mean, this offense is going to be fun to watch, explosive next year, which is just, it's going to be a new wrinkle, you know, like you guys mentioned how, like, I mean, that Chris Peterson was kind of some of the same as far as like his regards on the offensive side of the ball, but it was different though. Like Chris Peterson's always run a very like pro style system. This is like, I mean, it's pro style in terms of that there's multiple formations and multiple sets, but there's a lot of spread elements in this offense. Like it's going to be a lot different as far as the look of it and the feel of it, as far as just like, you're going to see a lot of passing to run kind of thing in this offense, which I just think fits our roster really well right now. I do worry about the running back position a bit now. I think he will probably see you're going to see some transfers out at that running back position.
I don't really care, to be honest. As long as we have a decent offensive line, we're going to be okay. Even if you have, I mean, JV on Sunday, God forbid, and if you have him, I'm just saying that to bug Sam, but even if you have JV on Sunday with a good offensive line, you're fine, right? I mean, I'm more worried about the wide receivers and the quarterback much more than the running back position.
I think the only other thing I'd add to this question as well is I think college football is so much more regional than people think. And it's manifested like it is so hard. And that's part of the shock for USC being able to go into Oklahoma and pull someone like Lincoln Riley. Like, you just don't see that happen very often. And we saw it play out. Like, we weren't able to get Matt Campbell to come to the West Coast. And so Kalen DeBoer, for all intents and purposes, like his most relevant experience and success is on the West Coast in Division I FBS football. And so you look at the openings, the current openings on the West Coast, it's UW. What was that?
Sorry, I think I made a weird noise. Sorry. I was playing with my boo.
You got some aliens over there, man.
My bad.
But my main point is you had USC as a job opening, and they were always going to be shooting higher than DeBoer. UW was right in the wheelhouse. And then to your point, with WSU promoting their interim coach Dickert, like there weren't any job openings that he would be a regional fit for. So I think that has more to do with it than like questioning, you know, what do we see that nobody else does type stuff.
It is interesting to be fishing in the same pond as Wazoo, though, even though they did come and just kick our ass. I mean, not that Wazoo was really fishing, but
no.
Yeah, I don't think DeBoer was ever really a serious candidate there.
No, because they kept it. I mean, once they kicked our ass.
And I think DeBoer was going to be shooting higher than Wazoo anyways. I don't know that he would see Wazoo as a improvement in Fresno State.
He probably would have stayed at Fresno. We do have a Kook fan in the chat, so we can answer this, I guess, too. No.
Unlikely. Jaden Delore is good.
He's good, but he's not
really good. But
it's going to be whoever the quarterback at USC next year is probably going to be the favorite.
Yeah, I would say Jaden Delore probably at the end of this season is arguably the best quarterback in the Pac-12 playing right now.
Who is the? Yeah, I mean, who's going to win that award?
Probably is.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, he won't be
Cam Rising, maybe, but like he hasn't played all.
No, I think Delore is probably
that or the ASU guy.
Yeah, I think Delore is playing the best quarterback football right now of
Sure.
anybody in the Pac-12. But MVP for 2022, sure, I'll throw his hat in the ring, but
He'll be top 5. I don't think he'll win it though.
I don't think he'll end up winning it. But yeah,
Sam
it's
Heward
not
will be
a
above
crazy
him.
statement. Yeah, I don't know. Got to throw a couple.
Well,
less
come on, man.
interceptions.
I mean, we have a whole offseason where he'll be hopefully taking the number 1 team reps.
Yeah, he will.
I do hope that they bring in a transfer though to compete with him.
Demo, right? I mean, Demo started over him every game, right? I mean, that's great competition.
Yeah, I mean if Demo stays, but yeah.
We'll see. Hey, throw Will's comment up there really quick. I got a rebuttal for that. You whisk poops on you wash. There can only be one UW. There is first of all, there is only one UW. University of Wisconsin, from my understanding, is called UW. And last time I checked, didn't Wisconsin kind of chicken out of a home and home agreement that we had with them?
Years ago, they did.
We should be playing them next year, I'm pretty sure. But
Yeah,
they decided
but years ago
scared.
that happened years ago. But yeah,
Well, they backed out of it like 2 years ago, like
Right.
2 or 3 years ago. So last time I checked, you might want to be checking your own school's pants for poop.
I mean, it works out better for us. I mean, we have a better team in Michigan State coming here, so it all works out.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, Wisconsin's
like
not
Zing!
Wisconsin's not that good of a win, on the resume. It's not going to be moving many needles. So
if we went to Madison, that would be pretty impressive.
I feel I like Wisconsin, but will just come in with the fighting language. I can't help but
No,
get
defend your
defensive
team.
about
I
it.
get it. Yeah.
But I do like Wisconsin. There's more. I think we're really similar programs in a lot of ways.
Connor, did you watch that game where they choked against Minnesota with your friend?
I didn't watch it with him, but I did watch some of that game. Yes.
I watched it with Will.
I didn't.
Let me tell
I
you,
didn't watch the end.
Will was not pleased.
Yeah. It was,
may or may not have lost a pretty chunk of change on that one.
Man, yikes. So that was more out of like being salty that he just put that up there probably, huh?
I didn't.
Even though we have nothing to hang our hat on right now.
Yeah. So
Tyler has an interesting question.
He does. Did you want to answer that, Justin?
Sure. If UW rolls with Heward from the beginning of the year, does Lake still have a job? God. I don't know. Probably not.
I would be worried that he would.
I know.
No
I'm
chance
just
of
like,
that.
would it have worked out better and somehow saved the season where it wasn't 4-8? He didn't push a player. Maybe. I don't know. It's hard to see what cascades after that. It's hard to think given the reports that are coming out with his egotistical nature and recruiting.
And it would have been the same offense.
That's
would have been the
thing,
same.
is,
John Donovan would have been there. Right. So it's hard to see it, but
you
I
saw
feel
what
like there's
Heward
a
did.
higher, I mean, it's a higher chance. No shit. Cause he's gone, but
Yeah.
yeah.
No, it's a good thought exercise, but no. It
I would
wouldn't have
be.
saved his job.
I'm glad we didn't explore that at this point. I'll just say that.
The
Meanwhile,
management of the whole
I think-
quarterback situation was a disaster.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we're better off for it now that it went the way that it did, even though the season sucked.
Yeah, for sure. And we kept his red shirt intact, so we still got 4
Right.
years. But yeah, I think there's too much going on behind the scenes, and we all saw what Heward. I mean, what we saw Heward do in the Apple Cup is probably what we would have seen. I mean, he would have been better by the end of the season, probably. But this offense is just dumb as hell, and like in some ways, like let's throw Dylan Morris a bone. Like we all were, applauding Heward and calling for him. And there are things that I saw Heward do that are just like the raw talent is blatantly better than Morris. But given a halfway decent QB coach and offensive game plan, Morris is not as bad as he looked this year. He's just not.
Well, we
There's no
saw him
way.
last year. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
he was definitely a better third down quarterback last year. He definitely made plays last year. He was definitely more comfortable in the offense last year. I think he was obviously his mentals were screwed up, I think, this year, especially like after you get a few games in and you're struggling that bad. And he from the beginning, this offensive line was underperforming all year.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the offensive struggles all start with the fact that this offensive line did not perform the way that we thought it was going to.
Right.
And so, I mean, Morris did not have a lot of help. He had, obviously the play calling was awful too. I mean, those three things combined really, I think, kind of gave us an interpretation that Morris is a bad quarterback, which I don't think he's great, but he's definitely better than what we saw. I think we can all agree on that. There definitely is a lot more upset in Sam Heward, and I'm pretty sure that he's probably going to be the guy to lead this team next year with Kalen DeBoer. So,
yeah, I definitely say so.
Justin, we do have a Seahawks question here. I don't know if you want to answer that or not, but
I mean, this is a Husky, but here's what I'll say about the Seahawks. Blow it up, start over. I mean, you're 3-8. The coach has a backwards philosophy. He wants to run the ball. I think we had less than 20 yards rushing from our running backs tonight. Russell clearly isn't right for whether it's confidence, the finger, a combination of the two.
All of the above.
It's broken. The defense, while played better, is not faultless. You can say they were tired in the second half. The first half, they should not be giving up 15 play drives. Yeah. Can't get off the field. The offense can't stay on the field. It's all a mess. It's completely broken, the whole team.
Yeah. It's time for the Seahawks to take a page out of the UW's playbook and blow it up, start over.
Yep.
Trade Russell. Don't let him walk for free. Trade him to somewhere he wants. Get a draft pick. Hopefully that's the Raiders, and we can get like Derek Carr or Justin Fields, preferably, or some young quarterback.
Yeah. Hopefully you can still get something good. I mean, you will. But
you will.
Derek Carr.
I mean, Russell's been
Fresno State.
Yeah. Russell's been so good for so long. He's come back, and yes, you can argue last season he wasn't good either. But it wasn't him missing a wide open Gerald Everett for 5 yards. That's never happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's confidence and the finger. Something's not right, obviously.
Yeah.
Correct.
Blow it up.
I think we're all in agreement there.
Should we jump back into some DeBoer talk and kind of talk
for sure.
Next for us?
Yeah. God, I had a thought too. Go ahead with what you were thinking, but I had a thought. I'll interject if I remember it.
I think just kind of going back to what Justin kind of let us in on in terms of the broader view of DeBoer is, you're getting somebody that's a proven winner at all the different levels, that he's, every stop he's been at, like he's left things better than he found them. That's a great sign. Justin talked about him being, an offensive mastermind to a certain extent. I talk about him being a QB guru. Like those are all the things that we can look forward to. And then Justin alluded to like, well, what are some of the unknowns? Not necessarily like, I guess they are risks to a certain extent, but I think that has like a preconceived negative connotation to it a little bit. But what are the things that we feel like are less proven and we need to see out of him? And some of these things that might happen as soon as, tomorrow.
Right. I'll be really interested to see if Tedford is a part of the staff in some capacity.
I hope so.
There's rumors that obviously that he would possibly fill the vacancy now at Fresno State because he's itching the coach again.
Shady as hell.
Yeah, it would be. But there's rumors.
He helped Jen Cohen hire Kalen DeBoer.
Right.
And if he did that out of self-service so that he could get his Fresno State job, that'd be bullshit.
Yeah.
I'd be pissed.
Apparently Peterson liked DeBoer too, but yeah.
Correct.
But that could be some pretty shady optics if that's the way that it goes down.
Right.
But to your point, Connor, like we've heard mixed signals on this, right? Like, does he want to be a head coach? What does he want to do? We know he wants to get into coaching.
Yeah. I really hope that he ends up coming just because I think that he would be a huge. I mean, he's obviously a mentor to DeBoer already. And it would just be nice to have that be a little bit more formalized in some capacity. Whether I don't think Tedford, like, it would be great if he took the OC job, but I don't think that that's probably what would happen. It would probably be some kind of analyst, like strategic analyst or something like that, some overseeing type of role, I would assume. Consultant of some sort. That's basically what he was on the staff for Chris Peterson in 2016.
Yep.
So something similar to that, I could see. The other piece of this, though, is that Fresno State has hired a search committee. So if they were going to hire Tedford, then they would have done so. I think at this point, they wouldn't be hiring a search committee for their next head coach. So I think that there's reason for hope for Tedford to be involved.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I'm most interested to see if anyone stays also from the UW staff. Do you think that the DeBoer regime comes in and cleans house, or do you think you keep a couple coaches? And let me tell you what, if Bob Gregory sniffs the field, I'm going to be mad. So.
Yeah,
I think that ship has sailed for sure.
Yeah,
I think I started to answer your question a little bit preemptively. I thought you were going to say, will the DeBoer staff clean house and will he bring everyone from Fresno with him? Definitely not.
Yeah,
I think
that wouldn't be a Power 5.
I think there's a realistic, I think it's totally possible that you don't see a retained coach on UW's current staff. Mm-hmm. I would love it if they kept, there's only one person I want them to really keep, and I'd be bummed to see him go, and that's Ikaika Malloy. I think Ikaika Malloy played at UW. He is a linchpin in our recruiting efforts, particularly in the Hawaiian Islands. His position, he's recruited really well. He's proven to coach his players up and develop talent at the defensive line and outside linebacker position. So I think keeping him would probably be a smart move on DeBoer's side. And I'll caveat that by saying the other piece is I don't want him to just bring his whole Fresno State staff up here. There's a handful of names, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. Like if he just picked up his offensive staff and brought it here, I'd be pumped. And then build like a piecemeal version of a defensive staff, keep Ikaika Malloy, go after a super proven hot commodity of a defensive coordinator and fill out your staff that way. That's what I would like to see. Happy to go into like the names and why, if we want to do that right now. Or Connor, if you want to put your thoughts in general.
The guy that I'll just throw my hat in the ring for is Court Dennison. I think it would be you don't want him involved?
I did until today. I realized
news.
That there's some news out there. So basically he has a restraining order out against him for
never mind. Yeah.
Stalking and harassing some lady that worked within the athletic department at Louisville.
Really bad.
So like Jen Cohen's
uninformed.
Jen Cohen's gonna be a hard pass on that one.
Okay. But never mind.
Yeah. But I like where your head's going at, like a young recruiting based person. So the names that I'm thinking are like Dante Williams, obviously off the top of your head.
Sure.
But it sounds like he's part of the deal with bringing Lincoln Riley to USC. So kind of interesting to see how that works out. Like that's what
they hired Alex Grinch though.
But they hired Alex Grinch. So he might be looking, that would be a killer hire in my opinion.
Yeah.
Gerald Alexander is of the same cloth.
That's the other name that I was going to say. Yeah.
So I would love to see those two come in on the defensive staff. Again, would love to keep Gerald Alexander, would love to keep Ikaika Malloy. And the one thing to add on both Gerald Alexander and Dante Williams is they both have coached in some capacity at the University of Washington. Mm-hmm. So they're familiar, and I think that would be a really good fit. But it'll be interesting. I mean, you'd have to imagine in order to get one of those two, they would have to have the DC title. Neither one of them are like proven X's and O's coordinators. They're like,
sure,
made their bacon on their recruiting game. like who's a defensive coordinator that is like proven X's and O's, like stout defensive coordinator that you could see as a good fit outside of bringing, I think it's William Inge, I don't know how to pronounce his name, from Fresno State. Like outside of just bringing his current DC, like is there another like surefire DC he could bring in? Who? I know you're going to say it. Just say it.
That guy down in Berkeley, pretty good DC.
You think Wilcox?
If he gets fired,
He's not going to get fired.
He's not going to get fired, but he might just straight
He'd
up
leave.
Up and leave.
he'd probably prefer it. We'll offer him some money. We have money.
How much is Wilcox making now?
He would definitely make less here, I think, as a DC.
Yeah, he's got to be making like
probably
3 to 4. Yeah. You'd
He'd
have to
probably
be so fed up with the Berkeley situation where he would come to be a DC for less money than he's making now.
Yeah.
On his
I
own
don't
volition.
see that happening. I would love it. If
Oh.
we got Wilcox as a DC, oh hell yeah.
I mean, that's your X's and O's like proven guy though. Like
I mean,
that's
how
all
much
I'm
are we?
saying.
Do we know how much we're paying DeBoer yet?
I'd
I
imagine
don't
we're
think
paying him
contract
like
details
4.
are out. Yeah, I
Around
don't think
4?
contract details are out. But
Hell,
He's
that's
making
I
like
mean-
1.5.
Pay
Fresno.
Wilcox another 4. There we go. Come be the DC.
I mean, I wouldn't. If we could get Wilcox for like 2 to 3 million, if we had that money, that would be genius. That would be fantastic.
I think we could probably do it for like 1.5, maybe 2.
Oh, that's
2 would
not
be
good.
stretching it.
Yeah,
but
that's going to be a pass for Wilcox.
Yeah.
Who else?
Yeah.
Who else is out there? I have one other name that I'm happy to throw out.
Go for it.
Jeff Choate.
yes, that's a really good one. Yeah,
Big time.
I've heard his name.
recruiter, High energy guy. Peterson Tree from Boise, coached here
Mhm.
for a year before he left to take the head coaching job at Montana State. He's
I
currently
mentioned his
co-DC.
name. I mentioned his name when we were bringing up head coaches that I
You
would
did.
I would have him as a DC. Like,
That's
but
who
you
I
beat me
want.
to it. So
Is
yeah,
he going to
That's
get
the-
fired
Sweet.
at Texas?
Yeah, I mean, if we want to open that conversation up too, like, would Kwiatkowski come back? Probably not.
no.
But Choate to be the sole, like right now,
Yeah.
Choate and Pete Kwiatkowski both are like super tied in, obviously, to the Peterson Tree, super tied into UW. Kwiatkowski likely wouldn't come back, I don't think. But Choate to come back, they're both co-DCs for Texas right now, and their defense is ass. It's not good.
Mhm. Mhm.
And Choate coming to UW to be the sole DC with an offensive-minded head coach. It's no secret. Choate wants to be a head coach in a meaningful capacity in college football, and come to UW as the sole defensive coordinator, have success for 2-3 years. That's your path. I think that's a very realistic chance, and I would be pumped. I really like Choate. He's a high energy guy. He's down to like beat the recruiting trail as hard as anybody. I think that would be big time.
Yeah,
No
I can't argue with
objections?
it.
Yeah,
I
No.
can't
let's do
argue
it.
with it.
Let's make it happen.
All right, I'll call Jen.
All right.
Which, speaking of Jen, this is what I was thinking of earlier. All right, I know that like a lot of people harp on Jen, and like obviously like the two biggest sports that are money revenue generators at UW have largely struggled under her watch in the past few years, and her hires, I guess, have struggled in the past few years. But like, I struggle with that because I think on paper, both of those hires that she made at the time
Yeah.
made so much sense. So I just don't know how much you can falter. Like I give her a lot of credit for the action that she took on Jimmy.
Yeah. Ton of credit.
And like, sure, she missed out on Campbell, but like everyone else missed out on Campbell too. Campbell wanted to stay in Iowa State. Like that was he wanted to stay in the Midwest.
Or
in a
the
lot of
Midwest,
ways,
yeah,
you
yeah.
kind of just made your own argument. Like the last go around, she hired the obvious guys. Hopkins was the #1 wanted assistant coach. I mean, he was coaching waiting at Syracuse. And then
Yeah,
Jimmy Lake, if she
mean-
doesn't hire Jimmy Lake, it's like she made the obvious hires. She made
Sure.
the fans like number one choice, and they didn't pan out. So what's to say if she went and hired Matt Campbell that's going to work out? Like in some ways, if you want to look at it through purple lenses, like I always have on, like maybe going DeBoer is maybe not your number one option, but in some ways, like it's not the fan choice. It's not the sexy name, but it could be the right one.
Yeah, we all I mean, Matt Campbell, obviously, I liked him a little better, but I super like the offensive part that DeBoer brings.
Yeah.
You know me in offense, right? And so I loved Aranda as a leader of men, and the coaching. It's a word just stuck.
Yeah, we got to
in my
get out
brain
of
now.
that.
Yeah. But he's not leaving Baylor this season.
Right.
And then, so who else did we? I mean, Clausen. I don't like Clausen as much. We already talked about that.
Chadwell wasn't going to be considered.
I don't want Wilcox as much as we were just pumping up Wilcox as a DC. I do not want him as my head coach.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Napier went to Florida. Geographic, that you understand.
We weren't going to get the regional guys.
So. I mean, who else?
I think we got the best person available.
Besides going and pulling a USC and pulling someone that already has a job.
Yeah.
The
only other
good job.
Yeah. The only other name that I think we could have pulled the USC move on that fits our region would have been going and trying to grab Whittingham.
Sure.
Which, how many years does he have left?
Yeah, he's more likely to retire than leave.
He might retire this year.
Yeah.
Or you could get a unhappy. This would ignite our fan. Get an unhappy Chip Kelly from UCLA.
I don't think Chip Kelly would ever come to UW.
Yeah.
That Oregon UW rivalry runs too deep, man.
Speaking of Oregon, should we talk a little bit of the Cristobal?
Let's mention it. Yeah.
News. Obviously, LSU is out now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, he took a flight down to Miami to visit his sick mother, which, bless his soul. That's being a good son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he happens to have a school in Miami that he used to attend, and they don't have. Do they have a? They don't have a job opening yet, but they are going to. Basically, is
that's
the understanding.
Thinking.
I would say this. I think Miami will go into next year with Manny Diaz as their head coach, unless Mario Cristobal, on his trip to see his mom, had lunch and said, "Hey, if happenstance Manny Diaz gets fired, I would love to be the Miami head coach." Then you probably have Manny Diaz getting fired in the next week and Cristobal taking that job.
Yeah, that's probably the only way it happens.
Yeah.
Right. On that note, I mean, do you want Cristobal to leave Oregon?
I mean, he's ate our lunch.
Recruiting.
Yes.
Well,
and on the field too, to be fair.
Yeah. I think also I just don't think he's honestly that good of a coach. I think he's just a really good recruiter.
Yeah. But I think recruiting really is the name of the game. So we see it play out this year.
Sure.
Oregon is stacked, and even if he's an average coach, they're going to be super good team year in, year out. They're going to drop a game here or there, maybe, and not be able to realize their full potential year in, year out. But as long as he's recruiting at the levels that he is, Oregon's going to be a tough win every year. So my thing is this, whether it's Cristobal or somebody else, as long as Phil Knight is alive and just pumping money into that program, they're just going to go, if they lose Cristobal, they're just going to go get somebody else that does the same thing. So I'm indifferent. I think Cristobal's time at Oregon is limited. It's obvious to me. He's going to end up at Miami this year, next year, whenever that job comes open, he's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I guess they could always go the Willie Taggart route and screw themselves over, but they care too much about football. Like Oregon at this point, like Oregon's never going to go back to the cellar that they used to be in. And so whether Cristobal's there or not, like they're going to be a tough team to beat every year.
Yeah.
That's just as long as they're getting the money piped in.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And I think the whole coaching aspect, I think, is just like where there's going to be a difference. Like if we think that Cristobal's not really that great of a coach, like I don't mind him staying there because they're always going to get the recruits. Like he's a good recruiter, but like I think the next person in line would be just as good of a recruiter with Phil Knight's dollars. So I would rather have them have like a quote unquote really good recruiter and maybe not as good of a head coach than the opposite in that position at Oregon, just because I think, especially with someone like Kalen DeBoer, who could like scheme his ass up, probably X's and O's Y. So
now there's the whole added element that we haven't really seen fully yet of the NIL and transfer portal and et cetera. And it's just gonna be like free agency period and people, high performing players at lower level schools transferring to Oregon because they can make money or have be part of a system. So
or does it level the playing field out where we all know Oregon's been paying players forever? Now, if you can get paid at UW, does it have the opposite effect? But
and also now Lincoln Riley's at Southern Cal now, so Oregon's not going to be able to recruit as well.
Yeah. But here's then another, like, I think Anna had a comment that was funny. Give us DeBoer on DeBoer.
Yeah.
This Oregon talk actually brings up a good point with DeBoer is they beat UCLA. Fresno State beat UCLA this year.
They did.
They arguably should have beat Oregon. Two things that UW couldn't do. And DeBoer and that Fresno State team were without a doubt less talent than UW. And he found a way to do things that UW couldn't with lesser talent. So like Connor, the conversation sparked that for me to bring up that fact because you mentioned DeBoer is going to be able to out scheme in a way that we haven't seen since Peterson and probably since Jonathan Smith was here.
Right.
That's got to have you be excited as a Husky fan.
Yeah, I think it probably makes Justin the most excited out of the three of us, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like watching the Seahawks. I just wanted to rip my eyes out every Husky game, right? I mean, it's just absolutely awful. And so this just gives me hope.
I'm glad you still have your eyes.
Me too. And going into Kent State, I want to drop like 70. Show me everything. Like I want absolute zero mercy.
Yeah. Let's look at our schedule for next year, and maybe I'll bring it up so we can share screen. I'm just curious, like how this lines up. I guess we only know our non-conference and then who we play.
Yeah, we don't know the order.
We don't know the order of the conference schedule.
But we know the
home
Southern schools we're playing, right?
Yes.
Yes, and we know know home and away. It's just what order it's going to be in.
We got Kent State. Do we have Portland State next year too?
Sounds right.
Yeah, I'll bring it up here. Let me share a screen.
Michigan State's going to be interesting. It's a big game. I mean, they overperformed.
Is it here or is it in East Lansing?
And let's see.
Oh, it's here. Oh, all three of
us. That's gonna be sweet, dude.
I mean, we should be 2-0 going into that game, right?
I mean,
yes.
After the Montana debacle, I don't feel great about Portland State.
Unless the ghost of Don James shows up and Kent State beats UW.
Hey, Sean Lewis, good coach.
Oh yeah, I've heard.
Yeah.
As far as conference games, we're at ASU, at Cal, at Oregon, at UCLA, and then our home games are Arizona, Colorado, Oregon State, Stanford, and then we're at Wazoo for the Apple Cup as well.
There's some tough away games for us next season.
It's a way rougher schedule than it was this year.
We should win all our home games. If we're at the level we think we are.
Yeah. I would say, our away games
tough.
You can't predict a win in Tempe. We just don't do that.
I mean, we almost didn't.
We should win at Cal. I know it's like a house of horrors, but we should.
Yeah. But UCLA, DTR's gone, right?
I don't know.
He's got to be. That guy's got to be like 50.
I mean, you know who's next up though, and who has a
Oh, yeah.
stick up his ass with UW.
Yeah, I'm not worried about Ethan. He'll be fine. But yeah,
I ain't never worried about the glove.
the way that breaks down, the toughest games on the schedule, regardless where they're being played, are on the road.
Yes.
Yeah.
Besides the Apple Cup, like the Apple Cup's always going to be the Apple Cup, regardless where it's at. I like our first 2 games. That's nice.
Yeah. Should be 2-0. Should be 2-0 with Michigan State coming into town.
I mean, you would think that we make a bowl game, right? The 2 games, and then I mean, if you just win those 4 home games, which we should be favored in.
Yeah. What are you expecting, I guess, in like DeBoer's first season, just like building off of looking at the schedule? You can go record wise, you can go just like what you consider a successful season. I know, Sam, you have like your kind of itinerary that you check off for like a successful season. Which ones of those do you think is achievable next year? Yeah. And then like big picture, like where's the program heading like over the next several years? And is DeBoer a part of that for like, do you predict him to be a part of that for the next several years? Or do you think that this is going to be a stepping stone job for him, or it's just not going to work out for him here? So,
yeah. So I guess I'll answer the last question first. I don't think this is a stepping stone for him. I think it's very obvious I guess I shouldn't say very obvious, but from everything that we've heard, he was overly enthusiastic about the chance of becoming the head coach for the University of Washington. And, some people can try to read into it too much. Like, well, it's pretty obvious to him that he wasn't our number 1 choice. I don't think he gives a shit. He's a blue collar, lunch pail kind of guy. And he's like, in some ways that makes me even more pissed off and motivated to like prove that you had your priorities mixed up and I was the right guy from the get-go. So I don't think he cares at all about that. So I don't think it's a stepping stone for him. I mean, I know he's a South Dakota boy, born and raised. Like, maybe if he has like unprecedented success here and wins New Year's 6 bowls and goes to college football playoff, like maybe if everything, all the stars align, maybe he goes to like an Ohio State or Michigan or something to get closer to home. But on the, he's made his bread and butter on the West Coast in big boy football, and we're probably the best fit for him. You look at the 4 main schools on the West Coast, USC, UCLA, Oregon, and UW, probably fits our university the best from a personality perspective. So I think if it works out, I think he could be here for a long time. He's only 47, so you could see him go 10 years easily here if things work out. In terms of next year, with my hierarchy of, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, gotta win the Apple Cup. I think it's only right to throw Wazoo a bone right now. Like, the job that Dickert did, is he deserves all the praise. He deserved that permanent job with all the circus act that went on there all year. It'll be interesting to see. I think there is a thread of thought there around how much of the success he had this year was really built up by Rolovich, who's a good football coach. Like, say what you want to say about him being a whack job, this or that, but he can coach football. So it'll be interesting to see how he does with his own staff. But I don't think at this point, like, our run of domination with Peterson in the Apple Cup is gone. Like, you can't just chalk the Apple Cup as a victory this year for us, but you gotta hope that we can win that game. That's like bottom. So like this past year was a complete failure, disaster on every level. Like, we didn't meet any of my hierarchy of needs. Gotta win the Apple Cup. From there, you got to be competitive in the Pac-12 North. Like, can we come in next year with that schedule and be competitive in the Pac-12 North? with the talent returning, like if he's able to recruit the current players and keep a lot of the talent, particularly the wide receivers and the, Sam Heward's not going to transfer, but I know some people like to be trolls. Keep those guys on the roster. I think we have the talent to make a run at the Pac-12 North. Next year, I think it's probably going to take more than 1 year to get us to the point where we're competing for Pac-12 championships. I think Jimmy Lake did a number on this program from a culture perspective. So I'll probably have tempered expectations next year. Like, let's try to win the Apple Cup. Let's be in the mix for the Pac-12 North going into October. And I'd probably be happy with that.
If we're out by October, then we have some serious problems.
Yeah, by the end of October, early November, whatever.
Yeah.
November. That's what I meant. I'm trying to get my dates right here. I'm looking at my calendar.
It's okay.
But yeah, I think the realistic expectation is we should be in the Pac-12 championship game by year 4. Whether that happens in year 2, 3, or 4, we should be in the Pac-12 championship game. That's my expectation. Whether we win it or not, we should be in the Pac-12 championship game by year 4.
Would you be happy with that?
Yeah, I would. As long as the trend is going up. If we come out of the gates, we win our first 2 games, we get shellacked by Michigan State, we kind of win some that we weren't supposed to win, lose some that we weren't supposed to lose next season, but we end on a 2 or 3 game win streak. We need to make a bowl next year. With that schedule, we have to win 6 games, right?
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
If we're talking about next year, all I want to do is go to a bowl game and beat the Cougs.
I think the goal has to be 7-5 or 8-4 next season.
8-4 is pretty steep.
7-5. I mean, it's bowl eligible. 7-5 isn't too hard, and then you find another win. I mean, if
we get 7-5, I'd be pumped.
You would be pumped with 7-5 next year? That's.
I don't feel like a lot of the Husky fan base agrees with that take.
I would be satisfied.
Husky,
I think with 7-5, I wouldn't be.
I'm not saying I disagree, but I'm saying I don't think that's the general sentiment out there. Is that people are hoping and praying for a 7-5.
I also don't think that the general Husky populace understands how jacked up this team is right now.
I get that, but also there's a lot of people clamoring how quick, and national people too, how quick of a quote unquote rebuild this could be. Mm-hmm. Just with the talent base that's on it. You mentioned the blue chip ratio all the time, Sam, as far as how much talent's on this team and young talent. And I would assume that vast majority of those guys are probably going to stick around. You're going to see some guys transfer out, but I don't think it's not going to be a mass exodus. I think we know that. And it's not going to be any much different than any other year of what we would probably experience as far as transfer portal. I think he has an attractive offense. And if he nails the DC hire, I think 8-4 is definitely in the realm of possibility. If we're talking about what would I be pumped about? If we're 9-3, we're probably very close to winning the North, and that's what I would be pumped about. Even if we don't win the North at 9-3, I'd be pumped with 9-3.
I'd be jumping out of my chair. Maybe I was getting a little over enthusiastic, but at this point, I've dug a hole and I've hit the buried door of 0-12, he who shall not be named status as a Husky fan right now. If we go 7-5 next year, I feel good about that. Maybe pumped wasn't the right term, but I'm if we go 7-5 next year, we are going the right direction. And DeBoer has clearly won the locker room over. He's building his culture in, and things are looking up. I am excited if we go 7-5.
So I'm in the middle. I'm no doubt we need a turnaround, but I think 7-5 is at par is you get an E or a meets expectations on your report card. It's not necessarily below and you're flunking, and it's not doing something that I'm jumping out of my chair or even pumped about, really, to be honest with you. It's almost an expectation that we're 7-5 and we're bowl eligible.
Yeah, I would say
I think
expectation
6-6 is the floor.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the floor. I mean, if you don't make a bowl game, that's bad, right?
Yeah.
That's
I
really
think you
bad.
have to have 6 wins as bare minimum.
2 with Portland State and Kent State and win 4 other games in 10. If you can't do that, that's really bad.
Yeah.
I need to see what the schedule ends up panning out to be as far as the order of it. To see like what our October games are, what our November games are, and stuff. To see where we would likely be at that point.
And final roster.
Yeah, right.
Coaches.
Yeah, that would help too. Yeah, coaches is the next big step for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think I'm more in agreement. I think with Justin as far as just like just having 3 more wins, which I know it's a short season. Like three more wins is a quarter of the season, so I get that. But like in a season that we had a lot of close games, and like this was not a good football team this year, but like they lost what I saw stats like we lost like 4 games by a combined like 20 points or something like that. So like there were a bunch of 1-score games this year. And so this team wasn't really actually that far from being like a 6-6, 7-5, if you put it that way. So doing that next year, like that should absolutely be the floor expectation. I think 8-4, like really good first year, good first year. I think we have some momentum. 9-3, I'm pumped. I'm ecstatic. I think that we're building something really special at that point.
Yeah.
But I'm confident at 8-4, 7-5. I'm probably like it was a satisfactory season, but I probably expected a little bit better. I think my expectation right now is 8-4.
Yep, so, I agree. Man, and I think year 2, we need to be second or first in the Pac-12 North.
Yeah, I'm not on year 4, dude. Like by year 3, I think we need to be in the Pac-12 championship. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I said by year 4 if we haven't. I didn't mean like I meant in year 2, year 3, or year 4. Mm-hmm. Pac-12 North championship.
Okay, that's fair.
I'd be good about like extending him, but my expectation is probably year 3 for that. And I think for next year as a whole, I'm just like I liked what I saw out of Sam Heward, but it was definitely eye-opening for me that like he definitely has not had any high-level college coaching.
He's going to get a lot.
He's going to get a lot.
Get a crash course, yeah.
And so I anticipate a lot of improvements, but I think this team is in complete disarray and shambles right now.
I agree.
So I think I don't want to get too greedy. And part of me is also like, well, I'm the guy that was blowing 12-0 this year. So it's like, I got to undersell and over deliver going into next year. So,
and you'll predict the same next year. Don't sell yourself short.
No, when did we switch chairs right now?
Promise you, I will not be predicting 12-0, but I think if we win, you guys talked me up 1 game. I'll expect 7 wins next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can live with that right now. Let's see how you feel when spring ball rolls around and they got to like Sam Heward slinging it around in spring practice. They got a new sexy offense. They nailed their DC hire. It's just they got Justin Wilcox.
We're going to the championship game, college football playoff. We're going to be there 12-0.
Real quick before we sign off, we do have a Fresno resident in the chat, and I just wanted to share one particular comment, and I want you guys to answer who you think this reminds you of. Minus Peterson. The Bulldog, insert Husky.
Peterson.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I love it. I actually went back today and I rewatched his introductory press conference when he got the head coach job at Fresno State. Partially because I want to be able to like have that in my memory bank when I watch his UW intro press conference tomorrow and see like
how similar they are, what the differences are. But sure.
I mean, I like him a lot. Personality wise, I think what he brings as an X's and O's coach is a given based on his track record. I think what he brings in terms of a leader position and a leadership role is a given based on his track record. So some of Chad's other comments around like really going to be interesting to see who he can get as a DC. You know, that's really going to be the linchpin of how enthusiastic we're going to be going into next year is how does his staff shape up? My guess is, to my earlier point, he'll bring a lot of his offensive staff with him. Mm-hmm. And then it'll be interesting to see how that defensive side of the ball shapes up from a coaching perspective. But if he can pull out some cards from his sleeves and put together an all-star cast on the defensive side of the ball, whether it is something crazy like Wilcox or getting a Choate or a Gerald Alexander or Dante Williams, like who knows? You guys could be on it. It could be. I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility that we rattle off 8-9 wins next year. No, I think that's totally possible, but a lot of shit would have to go right.
Sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I mean, this all depends obviously on especially that defensive coordinator position hire. Like that's as important as the offensive coordinator was for Jimmy Lake. Like this is the same situation, but with the defensive coordinator for Kalen DeBoer. I don't think he's ever going to turn into what Jimmy Lake turned into. I should probably knock on wood, but like he doesn't seem to have that character to him. That was all that I'm saying.
Yeah.
And our defensive identity is going to look different than we've
definitely
gone accustomed to. We've been DBU for a while now, and we can shit on Jimmy Lake all we want, but he was a hell of a defensive backs coach.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
Right? Arguably the best.
Yep.
100%. And so the McDuffies, the Kyler Gordons, the Sidney Jones, the
Buda
Byron
Bakers.
Murphys, the Buda Baker, you insert player, right? Almost everyone. Taylor Rapp that has come through here. It's going to look different. We're not going to necessarily have those guys come into UW all the time now. And so, what is this defensive coordinator's identity? It just doesn't need to be a defensive backs guy. I want to, somebody that's comfortable with various schemes or potentially maybe a different one because it's going to be different guys coming here.
Yeah.
Gerald Alexander is the one guy that would probably keep that defensive back tradition going pretty good. But
yeah, and Dante probably would too. Who's Chad? Chad knows what he's talking about. Let's flash his last two comments up here.
Sure.
So this is a really good point. Coming in with Tedford, the Bulldogs were 1-11 under DeRuyter. So knows what the rebuild and everything, going back to that press conference where he was introduced as a Fresno State head coach, he gave a bunch of credit to Tedford and how much he's learned from Tedford in terms of the, tips and tricks of the trade of being a head coach. So he's definitely learned a lot from Tedford. Being able to turn a program around like Fresno State, being a piece of that is really a huge thing. And then based on the conversation we were just having around defensive coordinators, this tells me Chad knows football because head coach at Hamilton in the CFL, Mr. Orlando, this would be a hell of a hire.
It would be
I don't know this guy, so you should please speak on him.
Yeah, he is a stud. I don't know. Right now he's a head coach in the CFL. He's probably making less than $1 million, honestly. Mm-hmm. I think his aspirations are for sure to be a head coach. So in some respects, people are questioning whether or not he would view a defensive coordinator position back in college football as a demotion or whatnot. So I know there's kind of like some hemming and hawing whether or not Orlando's an actual realistic candidate for the DC role, but I would put him right up there with Jeff Choate in terms of like who I would love to see. And he's a Seattle guy. So
yeah, he's worked with DeBoer too when DeBoer was
that was my next
coordinator.
Yeah.
It wasn't a head coach yet, but he was an offensive coordinator at Fresno. I saw this name on the board earlier, which is the only reason why I know who that guy is. So
I must have missed out on the board this afternoon because I didn't know the court thing. I don't know this guy.
You missed out on a little bit.
You missed out on 2 hours. How dare you?
Yeah.
And to Chad's point earlier about, he took over the 111 under DeRuyter and et cetera. Indiana was 5-7 and didn't look like anywhere near the same offense before he came in as the offensive coordinator there. So it's not only his success where he's been as an offensive coordinator or head coach, but it's what he's turned around since he came in there and how quickly that's happened. And you've said that a little bit, Sam. So yeah, it's a super exciting hire. I'm glad we have him. It's like everyone's 1B choice where it's like right under what exactly you wanted. And I think, there's some unknowns, but there's a lot of upside. And I think we're excited.
Yep.
And hopefully if he's listening to the brain trust of Chris Peterson, Jeff Tedford, which from everything that we've heard is he is a student of the game. He has respect for the elders of the trade. You got to think with those people in your back pocket that, you can reach into the Peterson tree, you can reach into the Tedford tree and find a guy to help you on defense. I think it's totally possible.
Definitely. Have a great night, Chad. Thanks for joining.
Appreciate it, Chad.
Anything else that you guys want to touch before we wrap for the evening? I feel like we've covered a lot, and there's definitely going to be more to cover as some of the assistant hires start getting rattled off. That should happen relatively quickly, right?
I think by the time we go into the weekend, we should have we should definitely know by the weekend who's coming with him from Fresno State, and that should give us a better idea of the assistant coaching search that needs to proceed.
We'll start to learn a lot of what you just said tomorrow and Thursday, or tomorrow and Wednesday, I imagine. Today was Tuesday. What a bummer. Yeah.
And the press conference is scheduled for 11:30 tomorrow?
I think so. Yeah.
Yep.
So tune in if you can. I think it's on Pac-12 Network and then Facebook Live or something, I think.
What'd you guys think of, before we wrap up, what'd you guys think of the announcement video of DeBoer from UW Football's account?
A little cheesy, but
a little cheesy.
Yeah. Jen Cohn was channeling her inner Carol Baskin, so wearing that leopard print. I guess this is the other interesting tidbit that we didn't bring up. In that video, you see DeBoer's family, and his daughter is a top 20 softball player in high school.
Heather Tarr's a happy woman right now.
Yeah, Heather Tarr, the head coach of your Husky softball team. I think she tweeted out like a smiley face the other day.
Did she?
Yeah. Might be getting a pretty good player coming her way. Which, if your dad's the head ball coach at UW is a softball powerhouse. Heather Tarr is arguably
the family's going to be living in Seattle at that point. So
she's arguably the best softball coach there is. Isn't she the head coach of Team USA this year or something like that?
Yes.
She's one of the best. Yeah.
Yeah. So she's going to be wearing purple and gold.
Good night, Julie. Thanks for joining.
Wow. She hung out till 10. Way to go.
Yeah,
Mom.
She did. I was impressed. It's awesome.
We had a large audience in here the whole way, so thanks for tuning in, guys.
Yeah. No, we appreciate obviously the support. Subscribe, guys, if you haven't already, because we like doing these every once in a while. If you haven't subscribed to our regular podcast, obviously do that as well. I should have brought that up before Chad signed off, because maybe you would have been a new listener on our podcast. But yeah, if you haven't subscribed, obviously to the regular podcast, which if you're still here, you probably have, but definitely subscribe to that. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you name it. We're on basically all the podcast platforms. But every once in a while, we like to mix it up with the video and do one of these YouTube live streams. Hi, Anna. Yeah. I mean, there's 10 people in here still, so you're definitely not the last, but yeah.
Don't worry. She doesn't teach math.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. Anything else, gentlemen? I feel like that probably covers basically everything. Hey, Kraken, winners of 4 out of 5. Let's go, boys. Let's go. We're rattling off some W's.
That's all we have left, guys.
We're above the Canucks in the standings now. The rivalry is on.
You betcha.
No.
I'm excited. Sam, you're the only one that hasn't been to a game yet, so you got to go.
I know. I got to go. I'm thinking my in-laws, the Herds, they've got some tickets over for the Blackhawks, so maybe I'll make a birthday trip out there in April and watch the Kraken.
To Chicago?
Yeah, make the Kraken watch the Kraken in enemy territory. We'll see. Maybe.
Yeah, it'll be a revenge tour because they put a pretty good licking on us.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't like a blowout really. It was. I mean, it was for the majority of the game.
Yeah.
We made it exciting at the end.
Yeah.
But I was at that game, and it was really fun in the last 2 minutes. But other than that, it was kind of a boring hockey game. But there was a fight, I guess, and I still had a good time.
Ooh.
The arena is incredible. You definitely need to go.
Yeah, I got to check out Climate Pledge. So we'll see. Well, we'll do a date night or something and check it out.
Sounds good. We can do that. All right, guys. Well, we'll sign off for the evening. As always, thanks for listening, guys. Subscribe and follow if you haven't already. On our regular podcast, you can leave us a message on that. But obviously, thanks for interacting, everyone on the chat here. It makes obviously the show a lot better whenever we can interact with our listeners. So we'll let you know whenever we do another one of these. But until next time,
Go Dogs!
and go Kraken.